This podfic contains content that may be disturbing for some viewers, including mentions of violence, guns, and physical and emotional abuse. Please check out the complete list of content warnings in the description, and proceed with caution if you are sensitive to these topics.
Hello, my lovely little gemstones. It's Afira, and today I'll be reading When the Chips Are Down by Whiskey with Patron. Chapter 45. I still miss my dad. Virgil bolted awake when someone knocked on his door. He flung his blankets off, clutching Miss Snuffles like a lifeline. "Virgil," Janus's voice called through the door. "You have to get up. I have work." Virgil waited as his heart slowed to a normal pace. "Right." He set his stuffed cat back on the bed. "Give me a minute, Chimera." Janus's footsteps walked away. Virgil glanced at the clock. It was 7:30. Way too early to be awake. He hated that he had to get up so damn early just to go to a bank every day. However, he dragged himself out of bed and off to the bathroom. One good thing about this huge house was that he had a bathroom all to himself. He took his time showering and getting dressed. When he put on his sweater and made his way to the door, he paused when he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. Jeez, he did not look good. He peered into the mirror. He was paler than usual, which wasn't a surprise. He hadn't gotten a lot of rest the past couple nights, constantly waking up and tossing his sheets everywhere in his sleep. The bags under his eyes were darker than ever. He glanced at his backpack on the floor of his room. He hadn't even unpacked the little bit of makeup he brought. He trudged over to his backpack and lugged it into the bathroom. He hadn't brought much of his makeup, but maybe unpacking it would be the first step to getting settled in this house. He was probably going to be staying here for a while anyway. One glance in the mirror pulled an exhausted sigh from his lips. He blotted foundation over his face, using his fingers since he neglected to bring a sponge with him. He brushed a little bit of blush over his cheeks to bring some color to his face, swiped some purple eyeshadow over his eyelids, and slathered on some mascara. After a layer of purple lipstick, he stepped back to look at himself. Well, he didn't look like he was about to drop dead at any moment, so that was good. At least he looked alive. He carefully placed his makeup along the counter, in the order that he had used it. Since his toothbrush was sitting on the counter next to the sink, he placed his 3 makeup brushes in the toothbrush holder. The place didn't quite look or feel like home yet, but at least now the space looked more like it was his. Virgil shoved his hands in his pockets and made to leave the room, but he paused when his fingers brushed against something in his pocket. His heart pinched. He still hadn't read Dad's letter. He took it out of his pocket. Dad's curvy handwriting looped across the envelope, spelling out Virgil's name with hearts dotting the I's. The paper was crinkled from being in Virgil's pocket all night. Virgil turned the envelope over in his hands. Would Dad have expected Virgil to read the letter as soon as he saw it? Maybe the words he wrote were meant for past Virgil, who was scared and trying to make his way across the city to find someone he didn't even know. It might be too late to read it. Still, he tucked the envelope back in his pocket. He would read it later, maybe while Janus and DW were busy at work. He dragged himself downstairs, mind still fixed on the letter Dad had written him. He nudged open the door to the dining room and was met with a surprised stare from Diana, who was sitting at the table with a plate of toast in front of her. "Nice makeup," she said. "Thanks." Virgil crossed the room to the door that led to the kitchen. As soon as he stepped into the hallway, he heard Janus and DW's voices in the living room. He didn't want to intrude, but they both sounded agitated. He tiptoed closer to the living room and pressed himself against the wall. He couldn't see either of them, but now he could hear them. "I'm just saying, cutting ties with Wrath would be best for us," DW's voice said. "These kids are going to be in danger as long as our doors are open to Wrath agents." "It's not that dangerous," Janus said. "Look, the kids are safe. Justice can't get them as long as they're here." "But he's going to go after these kids again," DW argued. "And you know it's not just to get to Patton. If he knows Diana is related by blood, he's going to want to get to her." "DW, I don't want to upset Ares." "Yeah, I know. He's a powerful guy. He could probably tear our branch of Chimera to the ground if he wanted. But, Janus, this is important. I talked to Diana last night. She wants to be involved in this business." There was a pause. "She what?" "Yeah, I know. I told her she's got family who would drag her down, but she just wants to get out of her mom's controlling bubble. She thinks this is the only way out." Janus hummed. "Right. I forgot about her mother. Demeter was always a high-strung woman. It's no surprise that she's strict on her daughter." He cursed under his breath. "We can't let Ares see her. We either have to keep her out of the public eye, where no Wrath agents can see her, or send her back to her parents." "Or We could just cut Wrath off completely. Dorothy, you know why we can't do that. It could cause a war to break out in this city, and I don't want my employees dying in the streets at night. Virgil poked his head into the living room, unable to resist his curiosity. What are you talking about? Janus jumped in surprise. Goodness gracious, Virgil, warn a man next time. DW gave Virgil a smile. Hey kiddo, did you sleep well? What were you guys talking about? Virgil repeated. Janus and DW shared a couple glances. It's complicated, Janus said finally. It doesn't involve you, so please try not to worry about it. But you said someone wants to get to Diana, Virgil pressed. Why? Who is it? Kid, please let it go, DW sighed. We're trying our best to sort things out. You have nothing to worry about, I promise. We'll keep Diana safe. Virgil was hesitant to let it go. It sounded like they were in danger. However, adults usually didn't tell kids things, even if they needed to know. Virgil had learned a long time ago to just drop the subject and pray for the best. Okay, he relented. He turned back to the hallway. By the way, Janus interrupted before he could go too far, both you and Diana have asked us if we could get you to talk to a professional. I called a close friend of ours this morning. Would both of you be okay with speaking to someone today? Virgil furrowed his brow, a little confused. Yeah, I guess. Why? There's a man named Emil Patton Chimera visiting today, who's a licensed therapist. He's willing to speak with both of you at some point today. He said he'd rather it be this morning, so we'll have the rest of the day to sort through our own business. But our schedule is flexible, so he's ready at any time. Does that sound all right to you? Virgil hesitated. He'd never been to therapy, so he didn't know what to expect or what to talk about. Would he need time to prepare? However, he didn't know if he would get another chance to sort through his issues with someone who could actually help him. Yeah, I think that's okay. He paused as a question popped up in his head. Is he related to you? You said his name is Patton Chimera. Yes, he is, Janus confirmed. Sort of. He married DW's cousin, who tragically died in a freak accident 15 years ago. Absolutely tragic that he didn't see that bullet coming, DW muttered. What a tragedy. How horrible that he's dead now and no one knows who could have possibly killed him. Emil took over the branch of Chimera in Sidehill after his husband's death, Janus continued. Chimera is a family business. The leadership roles are all filled by people in our clan, I suppose you could call it. Many gangs are family businesses, Rathsblade included. Anyway, I'm sorry we can't tell you more, kiddo, DW said. You should probably go let Diana know about our plans for the day. Virgil was still reluctant to leave without getting answers about what they had just been discussing, but he retreated from the living room and went back to the kitchen. As Virgil got his breakfast together, he couldn't help but wonder what DW and Janus had been talking about. Who was Ares? Why were they talking about Aunt Demeter, Diana's mother? Virgil was halfway through his first Pop-Tart when the kitchen door swung open. Diana walked in with her empty plate. Hey, Virg, she said. She rinsed her plate off in the sink. Virgil nodded in response, unable to speak because his mouth was full of breakfast pastry. He twirled his necklace in his fingers as he ate. Diana set her plate down. By the way, I talked to DW last night. She said she would help me get a therapist. Did you ask any of them if you could get an appointment too? Virgil swallowed his food. I talked to Janus last night. He said he got someone to come in today to talk to us. Oh, cool. Diana smiled and ruffled Virgil's hair as she passed the island on her way to the door. I'm proud of you, kiddo. Virgil's stomach dropped. She looked and sounded so much like Dad, those words alone almost made him want to cry. He held the tears back and kept eating his breakfast. He didn't want to ruin his makeup by crying. As soon as Virgil finished his breakfast, he rinsed off his plate and went right back upstairs to get his backpack. If he really was going to have to talk about his issues today, he was going to need as much comfort as possible beforehand so he didn't freak out, which meant he was going to be taking just about all of his belongings with him. He put Miss Snuffles in his bag, along with his Draculaura doll and a few other things. He grabbed his headphones and put them on for good measure. Virgil took a deep breath. He could do this. He would be fine. He left his room and started for the hallway, but he paused. The door to Roman and Remus's room was still shut, and he hadn't seen either of them all morning. Virgil crossed the living room and gently rapped on the door. You guys up yet? The only answer he got was the sound of frantic scratching of pencil on paper. He He opened the door a crack and poked his head in. The bathroom door across the bedroom was shut, and Virgil heard the faint sound of the shower going. The covers on the bed were tangled up in each other, as if Roman and Remus had both been tossing and turning in their sleep. Remus sat on the bed, sketchbook in his lap. He clenched his jaw as he furiously scribbled on a page. "Remus?" Virgil said. Remus fumbled with his pencil. It flew out of his hand and clattered on the floor. He opened and closed his empty hand, as if he didn't know what to do with it. He lowered his head and gave a frustrated, sharp huff. "I'm fine," he said. "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." Virgil watched, concerned, as Remus grabbed his pencil off the ground. "Remus, do you need anything?" "No, I'm fine. I didn't sleep," Remus said. His voice was slow and careful, as if he was counting the words instead of paying more attention to what he was saying. "I'm just tired. So is Roman. I'm trying to draw. Please leave." He scowled at his sketchbook. Virgil counted the words as Remus said them. 18 words. Multiples of 6. "Do you want me to get Logan?" Virgil asked. Remus tensed, clearly put off by the fact that there was one more word in that sentence than he would have liked. Virgil tried not to feel bad about that. "I'm okay. I don't need him," Remus said. He tapped his pencil on his sketchbook 6 times. "You can go back downstairs. I'll be fine. Roman will be out in a bit. We'll be down there when we're ready to go. Just tell Janus we're fine." "Are you sure you don't need anything?" Virgil asked, hesitant to leave Remus alone when he was struggling. "Yes, I'm sure," Remus said sharply. "You can go." He scribbled something on the page, then crossed it out 6 times. His face went through a number of emotions that Virgil couldn't decipher. Virgil heaved a defeated sigh. He wanted so badly to help his brother, but there wasn't much he could do when Remus got this upset. "I'll be downstairs," Virgil said. Deciding to end on a number of words that might help Remus feel better, Virgil added in a quick, "I love you." Remus visibly relaxed. "Love you too," he said quietly. He couldn't seem to figure out anything else to say, so he left it at that. Multiples of 3 were acceptable when 6 was too much. Virgil left the room, making a mental note to recommend to Janus that Remus see a therapist as well. Andy did not want to wake up, but apparently life had other plans. She groaned and rolled over in bed. She did not sleep well at all. She shot an accusatory glance at the note Price had left for her last night, which she'd tossed on her nightstand. Her stupid thoughts about Price had kept her awake all night. Sure, some of her thoughts were about how stupidly cute she was, but most of them were worries about what Price wanted to say. She'd had half a mind to go out there in the middle of the night to talk to Price and get it over with, but she didn't want to accidentally wake anyone up, so she decided to do it in the morning. That had proved to be a bad decision. She hadn't been able to sleep for most of the night. Now she was awake, and it was morning, and she was pretty sure she wouldn't have much of a choice but to get up and get breakfast, because Dice Critique had a schedule, and God help anyone who strayed from it. Someone knocked on the door. "Come in," she mumbled. A security guard stepped into the room, a tray in their hands. "Mr. Critique has requested that all of his guests receive breakfast in bed. Miss... Their voice trailed off. Forgive me, but no one informed me of your surname." "I don't give that out to strangers," Andy said. "You can stick with Andy, or call me Miss Dormier if you insist on being formal with it." The guard nodded. "Miss Dormier it is. We've prepared breakfast for you, should you want it." "Sure, why not?" The guard walked into the room and handed her the tray. They turned on their heel and left. Andy called out a quick, "Thank you," as they shut the door. No sooner had they left the room that someone else knocked on Andy's door. She heaved a sigh and set the breakfast tray aside. She strode to the door. "What?" she snapped as she flung it open. Price took a step back. "Oh, sorry, She cleared her throat. It took Andy a minute to realize that Price held a ball of black fabric in her hands. "What's that?" Andy said. Price held it out. Was it just the light, or was Price blushing? "I never gave you your Fall Out Boy t-shirt back." Andy's annoyance faded, and her heart sank. "Oh, thank you." She took the shirt. "Is that the only reason you wanted to see me last night? You just wanted to give me my shirt back?" Price's face flushed, almost as red as her hair. You got my note?
Yeah. I didn't come find you because I was tired, but we can talk now. She stepped back from the door and nodded to the room. Come on in. Price hesitated, but she stepped inside. Andy shut the door behind her and walked back to the bed, where her breakfast was waiting. What do you want to talk about? She asked, picking up a slice of bacon off her tray. Price kept a fair distance from Andy and the bed. She didn't meet Andy's eyes.
I'm not great at apologies, she muttered, fiddling with the hem of her red shirt. So, bear with me, please. She cleared her throat. Andy, she said, and oddly enough, Andy's heart skipped a beat when she said her name. That was probably the first time Price had called Andy by her actual name instead of Hot Topic. But even if it wasn't Price's first time saying it, it was the only time she'd ever said it so softly, as if she was begging for Andy to listen and pay attention to her with that one word alone. I'm sorry about everything I said yesterday, Price said. Andy was almost taken aback by the reminder that everything that had happened yesterday had only just happened yesterday. It felt like ages ago. I didn't really mean a lot of the things I said, Price continued, and I was saying most of them to... I guess I wanted to convince myself that everything I said was the truth. I wanted to try and give myself a reason to leave you. I felt like I had to leave, because I didn't want the people I work with to think I'm going soft. I didn't want to be seen as weak or scared, so I lashed out at you. And I know that doesn't justify anything I said or excuse it, but I'm just trying to explain it so you might understand. And you don't have to forgive me, now or ever. I just wanted to let you know that I'm sorry. Andy munched on her bacon as she listened to Price speak. She really hadn't expected Price to apologize again. She thought Price would consider the apology she stumbled over last night to be enough. But Price was actually trying to make amends, it seemed. Andy studied Price's face to see if she was being genuine. Price kept her gaze on the ground, scuffing her feet on the carpet. She looked almost embarrassed, but more than that, she seemed nervous. Andy wanted to keep being mad. She really, really did. She wanted Price to feel bad for just a little bit longer about the things she'd said to Andy. But Andy just couldn't muster up the anger. She sighed. I forgive you. Price looked up, finally meeting Andy's gaze. Really? She sounded uncertain, voice a little shaky, as if she thought Andy was kidding. Yeah. She waved Price over to the bed. Come have some bacon. I can't eat all this by myself. If it was possible for Price's face to get even redder, it did. Oh, okay. She sat on the edge of the bed. Andy offered her a piece of bacon, and she took it. She gave Andy a small smile in thanks, and Andy's stomach fluttered with butterflies. She liked seeing Price smile. The door swung open. Hey, girls, Dice Critique said, swishing the iced coffee in his cup. Hate to interrupt this gay moment, but I'm hosting a meeting in the VIP lounge, and I need you all to look decent in a couple hours. Andrea, you can help your friends get ready while I handle Poison Dart, can't you? Andy sighed at the use of her full name. Yeah, I got it. This would not be the first time Dice invited her to a spontaneous VIP event. She wasn't prepared for it, but she didn't have much of a choice. Dice turned with a flourish and left the room. Price stared after him with wide eyes. What was that about? Remy's family is weird. Andy stood. Come on, let's find you something to wear. Chapter 46. I talk about dolls with my new therapist for a long time. The ride to the bank was relatively silent. Virgil and Diana had chosen to ride along with Janus and DW, leaving Roman and Remus with Logan in his car. Virgil still couldn't shake his concern for Remus, but he couldn't think of much of anything to do about it. Instead of focusing on something he had no control over, he tried to turn his thoughts to this guy Janus had mentioned. Virgil was pretty sure that this was the man he'd heard in Janus's office a couple days ago, while Virgil was hiding out in the blanket fort. Judging by that alone, the guy seemed pretty nice. Still, the thought of talking to someone about this was nerve-wracking. He'd never been to therapy before. Sure, Mr. Minder occasionally talked to the kids about stuff that bothered them and offered ways to help, but he was just a school counselor, not a licensed therapist. With all those thoughts in mind, the ride to the bank felt way too short. They got there way too soon, which meant Virgil would have to talk to this guy sooner, which could be disastrous. He didn't know what to say or what to do. He needed time. Diana must have sensed his anxiety, because she took his hand and squeezed it as they left the car. "We can do it together," she said. "I don't mind." Virgil searched her face for any hint of sarcasm or anything else that might indicate that she was joking or lying. He couldn't find anything other than sincerity. He nodded to show he understood. He and Diana walked behind Janus and DW towards the bank. Logan and the twins hurried after them. Virgil's stomach turned with anxiety as they went into the bank and made their way to the first floor down. He couldn't keep himself from chewing on his necklace. He didn't know what this new person would be like. He didn't have to wait long to find out. As soon as they stepped out of the elevator, a dark man in a beige suit walked up to them with a smile on his face. His hair hung in dozens of tiny braids, all dyed a bright pastel pink at the ends, and pulled back into a ponytail behind his head. His eyes gleamed with excitement behind his glasses. "Jenny! Dorothy!" he said. "I've been waiting for you. Do you how do?" Janus stiffened as the man wrapped him in a hug. "Hello, Emil. I'm good." The man let go of Janus and wrapped his arms around DW. She returned the hug with more enthusiasm than Janus had. "Hey, Picani. Good to see you." Janus gently nudged Virgil with his hands. "Kids, this is Dr. Patton Chimera. He works at Chimera over in Side Hill." Dr. Picani stepped away from DW and turned to the kids. Virgil tensed, but Diana squeezed his hand to reassure him that everything was okay. Dr. Picani smiled at them. "Do you how do, kiddos? I heard you're all related to someone I know. Patton Hart is your father, correct?" "He's my uncle," Diana said. "But yeah, he's their dad." Virgil gave a reluctant wave. "Hi, I'm Virgil." "I know! Jan told me all about you. I was told that the two of you are looking for help. That's you two, right?" he asked, gesturing to Diana and Virgil. Virgil opened his mouth to say yes, but his ability to speak seemed to have abandoned him. He nodded instead. "Well, I look forward to talking with you." Dr. Picani looked up at Janus. "When should we discuss the other issues?" "You can take maybe half an hour to 60 minutes with these two, probably. I would say you could take more time, but considering the urgency of the situation with Ares' justice and the poison dart issue, I think we should get it done as soon as possible." He set a hand on Virgil's back. "That being said, you two can take all of the time you need. There's no rush. The issue will still be here when you're done, and we'll still have time." Virgil nodded again. "I'm ready when you are," Diana said to Dr. Picani. "Great! Jan, could we use your meeting room if no one's in there?" "Actually, I think a familiar setting might be better for them. You can use my office. The rest of us will go to the meeting room." He gave Virgil's shoulder a squeeze. "You're in good hands, Virgil. I would trust Emil with my life." Virgil relaxed a little. He trusted Janus. Well, sort of. And Janus trusted Emil Picani. So maybe Virgil could give him a chance, at least. Janus stepped past Dr. Picani, guiding the twins along behind him. DW and Mr. Minder followed. DW gave Diana a thumbs up. Mr. Minder gave Virgil a smile. Roman waved at Virgil and Diana, but Remus just kept walking, tapping on his sketchbook. They disappeared down another hallway. Dr. Picani motioned for Diana and Virgil to follow him. "I've heard great things about you two," he said, practically skipping down the hallway towards Janus's office. "Jan doesn't often get to take care of kids, but out of the few that have ended up here, he has said the most about you. It's no surprise, really. You are Patton's kids, and..." Dr. Picani slowed and leaned down to whisper. "Just between you and me, I think Janus had a bit of a soft spot for your father a decade ago." A mischievous grin spread across Dr. Picani's face. "Well, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. It seems like just about everyone's had a thing for your dad at one point or another. But don't tell Janus I said that. It's a bit of a secret. Besides, he's over it now. Why, I think he loves Logan more than he loves gardening, and that's saying something." Dr. Picani's face fell a little. "However, if things had turned out differently, perhaps you kids could have ended up chimeras," he muttered. That would have made things complicated. Virgil and Diana exchanged a surprised glance. Janus? In love with Patton? Virgil couldn't picture it. Dr. Picani opened the door to DW's office. They walked across it to get to Janus's office, and Virgil relaxed a little now that the lights were dimmer. "Nice pillow fort," Dr. Picani commented as he skipped over to Janus's desk. He skidded to a stop before he could get there, though. "Would you rather sit on the couch instead? I don't want this to feel too formal, if that'll make you uncomfortable." "I'm okay with the desk," Virgil mumbled. "Alrighty." Dr. Picani settled in Janus's chair. Oh, this is so much more comfy than the chair in my office. He folded his hands on the desk and looked back and forth between the two of them with a smile. So, first time talking to a therapist for both of you? Dinah scratched the back of her neck as she and Virgil sat down. Yeah, my parents never thought I needed it. I couldn't get it, Virgil said, keeping his voice quiet. I'm not legally Patton's kid. Ah, right. Now, before we start, I would like to preface this by saying anything that is said in this room stays in this room. You can talk about whatever you'd like, whether you'd like to launch directly into talking about things that are troubling you, or if you'd just like to talk to me so we can get to know each other first. He rested his chin on his hand. So, would you like to speak first, or would you rather I start us off? Diana and Virgil glanced at each other. Neither of them really knew what to say. If you could start, that would be great, Diana said to Dr. Picani. All right. Since there are two of you, we might be hopping back and forth between topics a bit. He reached into his suit jacket and brought out a notebook and a pen. He clicked the pen and pointed it at Diana. You look less nervous. Do you mind if we start with you? Not at all. Dr. Picani clicked his pen a couple times. Why did you decide that now was the time to see a therapist? Diana folded her hands in her lap. I've never been to one before. I'm pretty sure I've been needing one for a while. That and my girlfriend is currently in a coma. Her voice was quieter on that last part. Right. Your girlfriend was hurt here a couple days ago. I'm aware of that situation. She means a lot to you, doesn't she? How long have you been together? Diana shrugged. About 6 months. She and my Uncle Patton have been my only sources of support outside of my parents. I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but my mom wants to control everything in my life. Even the college classes I was going to take this year were things that my mom wanted me to do. I don't want to do what she wants. I want to do what I want. Gemma always encouraged me to do that. Her face flushed with embarrassment. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant. Dr. Picani smiled. Miss Short, this is therapy. You can say whatever you want. Quick question. If you don't want to follow the future your mom has planned out for you, what do you want to do? Have you given that any thought? Diana wrung her hands. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I was thinking that maybe I could look into the kind of business that my mom used to be involved in. Confusion flashed across Dr. Picani's face. You want to be involved in the criminal underworld? Maybe. I haven't decided yet. I've done some research on the dark web about some gangs and organizations involved in things I could help with, like getting people over borders. I wouldn't just go off and start a solo career in crime. I know that I would need backup and support. She furrowed her brow. I've also been considering being a nurse. Dr. Picani blinked. Those are two very different career paths. Honestly, I could see you as either. However, you have to be aware of every part of this business. If you're going to be paid for helping poor people cross borders to start living better lives, you could also get paid for helping a man smuggle an underage girl into a country where it's legal to marry a child. You would be hurting people as much as you'd be helping others. Of course, that does depend on the organization you join, but the ones who get to be selective about their jobs are usually the ones that are much harder to join. Keep that in mind next time you go looking for gangs. Dinah nodded slowly as she listened. I will. Why are you this interested in crime, anyway? I don't know. I guess all these people in gangs and organizations seem to be so close with each other. Mom said we had family in the business, and I want to meet them. Dr. Picani's eyes lit up like he just had a realization. You want that sense of belonging. Your family has never given you that, so you're going to find a family that does. He grinned. Am I right? Diana's eyes widened. Oh, my goodness, you're completely right. Do all of my abandonment issues stem from the fact that my parents never gave me what I needed to flourish in my environment? She shook her head. Well, that is quite the pickle that I'm in, isn't it? Dr. Picani chuckled at that. Seems you had a bit of a breakthrough. You think on that for a bit. He scribbled something in his notebook and then pointed his pen at Virgil. Mr. Hart, you want us to switch tracks onto the Virgil train? Virgil's heart leaped into his throat. Sure, he blurted. Great. So, why did you decide now was the time to go into therapy? Virgil took a deep breath to calm himself as he searched his brain for a response. It's the first chance I've gotten for therapy, he admitted. Dad couldn't get us into a real therapist because he's not legally our dad, so we just got Mr. Minder as a counselor. So you've known you've needed therapy for a while. I guess. How did you know? Virgil blinked. What could he say? That he and his brothers were traumatized by the shit they went through in their foster homes? Would that be sharing too much information? You don't have to talk about that if you don't want to, Dr. Bacani offered. We can just as easily talk about something else to get a conversation going. He clicked his pen. Let's see. What are some of your interests? A thrill of excitement rose up in Virgil at the question. He had so many things he could talk about. He could talk about Monster High, Ever After High, his doll collection, cooking and baking, My Chemical Romance, anti-heroes and comic books. He stifled his excitement before he could start flapping his hands. Dr. Bacani would probably think it was weird. Therapy is a judgment-free zone, Mr. Hart, Dr. Bacani reminded him. Do or say whatever you want. Virgil bit his lip, trying his hardest to rein in the urge to move. Diana nudged him and gave him an encouraging smile, which made him feel a little better. He wiggled in his seat to let off some steam. I like collecting dolls, he said finally, a little reluctant to share despite the fact that he really, really wanted to. What kind of dolls? Virgil shrugged. Monster High and Ever After High mostly, but I've started getting into LOL Surprise. Dr. Bacani's eyes lit up. Have you seen the Ever After High web series? Virgil nodded, a smile teasing at his face. And all the movies. Oh my goodness, the animation for the series is amazing, and the character design too. Very underrated show. I know, Virgil said, bouncing in his seat. It took him a second to realize he'd spoken a little too loudly. He stopped bouncing and settled in his seat. Dr. Bacani didn't seem to think it was weird. His smile only grew. So, what's your favorite movie in the series? I like Way to Wonderland, Virgil admitted. Raven beating the hell out of Courtly Jester was pretty badass. I also liked Lizzie and her mom being reunited. That was sweet. It really was. I loved Wonderland. I wish they'd gone back there for another episode at least. Dr. Bacani clicked his pen. Out of curiosity, what did you think about the Dragon Games? It was a very plot-heavy season. Virgil thought about it. I liked it, he said. It was fun, and I liked the dragons. Just out of curiosity, what did you think about Snow White and her interactions with Applewhite? Virgil grimaced. I didn't like Snow. She was treated like this perfect queen, but she was a jerk to her daughter. She pressured Apple into trying to be better than Raven and lying to be more popular. She was kind of a shit mom. Pardon my language. Dr. Bacani nodded. He scribbled something in his notebook. And what about the evil queen? What did you think of her? She was cool as a villain, but I didn't like her as a mom. In the books, she turned her daughter's puppy into a bone rat and scared her every night with stories about villains who hurt people. In Dragon Games, she forced Raven to be just like her. She said Raven didn't have a choice about being evil, and then she attacked her. She's a manipulative bastard, which I guess is normal for an evil queen, so I don't know what else I expected. Fair enough, Dr. Bacani said. But at least they had parents. The one problem I always had with Monster High was that we never got to see their parents, even if their kids were in severe danger. Yeah, Ever After High was definitely better in that sense, Virgil said, twirling his necklace in his fingers. At least we knew it was a boarding school, and their parents couldn't be around all the time. Turning the subject to Monster High for a second, what did you think about Cleo's father, Ramses? Virgil scoffed. He was a jerk. Worst parent by far in both franchises. He constantly set his daughters against each other and criticized Cleo for everything she did, especially in Ghoul's role. He had no problem with manipulating her into getting hitched with Pharaoh so he could have more power. He didn't care that Cleo was miserable. He and Nephra lied and cheated to get what they want. Pharaoh's mom wasn't much better. She didn't deserve that moment of redemption she got in the end. Dr. Bacani hummed in response as he wrote something down. Mr. Hart, can I just say that you remind me very much of Raven Queen? Virgil stared at Dr. Bacani. He hadn't expected that comment. Is it the purple hair? Dr. Bacani laughed. Well, that could be part of it, but you seem to have a very clear image of the way you want things to be. You don't like it when the adults in the society they've made act unfair. I bet if you were destined to be a villain, you would have ripped your page out of the storybook of legends just like Raven did. In the books, at least. Life hasn't been fair to you, and you want to make it fair, both for you and the others that are suffering in the same way you have. Virgil blinked. You got all that from listening to me rant about characters in a doll franchise? Dr. Picani spread his hands. I suppose I'm just a good therapist. Besides, the fictional characters people criticize, sympathize with, or relate to can give others an insight as to how this person feels. You're a rebel at heart, Virgil, but I'm willing to bet that, like Raven, you're not sure how to make things fair for yourself without inconveniencing others, and that makes you uncertain. You sympathize with the people who have been beaten down by society because you are one of them. You're not too fond of most adults you meet, are you? Virgil shrugged, still a little surprised. This guy had managed to completely understand his thought process just by having him talk about characters in a show. He was good at his job. It takes you a while to trust most adults, but you did say that you enjoyed Liz's reunion with her mom. Why is that? She has a mom that's not a jerk, Virgil said. I'm glad she has that. Because you never had that? Yeah, I guess. Dr. Picani tapped his pen on his notebook. Now, here's a character I want your opinion on. Maddie's father, the Mad Hatter. What did you think of him? I thought he was really fun. He was great with his kid, too. Probably the best parent in the series. He reminds you of your father, doesn't he? Virgil paused. Dr. Picani was right. The Mad Hatter was oddly similar to Patton. Fun, carefree, kind and loving, generally a good dad and a good person. Oh my God, you're right, Virgil whispered. Emil grinned. He opened his mouth to say something else, but he was interrupted when the door swung open. Virgil twisted around in his seat to see who had come in. Janus stood in the doorway, his phone in his hand. We can continue these conversations in our next session, Dr. Picani said. Janus, what's wrong? Janus held up his phone. Something just happened. We need damage control. Now. Chapter 47. I have an identity crisis over an outfit. When Patton woke up, it took him a moment to remember where he was. He resisted the urge to curse under his breath. He'd nearly forgotten that he was in the Critic House again. He shifted in bed, but stopped when Remy squirmed and wrapped his arms around Patton tighter. Remy had been asleep already when Patton went to bed, but as soon as Patton lied down, Remy had latched onto him and wouldn't let him go. It seemed as though Remy wouldn't let him go until he was awake. Luckily, Patton wasn't too eager to leave the room anyway. He relaxed in Remy's arms and shut his eyes again, falling back into a sort of half-sleep. The door slammed open. "Wake up, bitches!" Remy groaned. I swear to God, Dice, I will murder you. Dice strode into the room and smiled down at Patton and Remy. Aw, you two are cute. But I need you to get up. It's 10 o'clock and I'm holding a meeting in the VIP lounge. We're going to have guests. You both need to look presentable. Remy narrowed his eyes. Why do you have to drag us to your meeting? Because you're very important people, hon. Important to me, at least. All your little friends are welcome to come, too. Andy's been to a few. I'm sure she can help that gay boy and her bi friend get ready. She can help you, too, Rem. Dice booped Patton on the nose. You are going to get ready with me. We haven't even had breakfast yet, Patton complained. He almost wished he'd never come back to the Critic House, despite its safety. Dice could be nearly unbearable sometimes. It's fine. There will be food there. I thought I would let you two sleep in until 10 at least. Andy's been trying to find something for her bounty hunter friend to wear for the past half hour. Dice sipped at the iced coffee in his hands. Remy, you can go join the rest of your friends. I'll be handling poison here. Remy furrowed his brow. Are you sure? Yes, bitch. Don't worry. He's in good hands. Remy looked uncertain, but he sat up. He slid out from under the covers. Patton noticed that Remy was still wearing the shirt he'd lent him, the one with the cartoon cat on the front. The collar slipped off Remy's shoulder as he stood. Patton's face heated up when he saw the fabric slip past Remy's collarbones. Remy shuffled off to the door. You gonna be okay, Pat? He asked. Patton sat up. Yeah, I'm good. Remy still looked a little uncertain, but he left the room. Dice nudged the door shut behind him. Have you told him yet? Dice asked. No. I kissed him on the cheek yesterday, but I don't think he's realized I like him yet. Dice barked out a laugh. Oh, he is such an oblivious disaster. Love him, though. He's just a little stupid. Do I have to get dressed up for this again? Patton asked. If you want to, but I won't make you, Dice said. I just think it would be a good way to show that no one can mess with you as long as you're with me. It might help keep you safer, darling. Dice shrugged. And while we're there, you could always come out of hiding. Let everyone know exactly who they're dealing with. Patton grimaced. He hated that Dice had a point. Going with Dice to some public event would further secure his safety as long as he was here. As for that last part, I don't know if I'm ready, Patton whispered. Dice held out a hand. Patton took it and hauled himself to his feet. He tugged Patton towards the walk-in closet. We'll see. Come on, darling. Patton followed. Dice opened the closet and turned the light on. Most of the hangers on the rungs were empty, but a few were occupied. Most held pajamas and jackets and a few shirts, the majority of which were made of fabric that faded from orange to blue and decorated with black whorls. I found your old suit when I went through your closet a while ago, Dice said. He walked all the way to the end of the room and plucked a hanger off the rung. Hanging from it was a 3-piece suit. The collar of the suit had the same blue to orange gradient as the rest of his clothes, as did the tie draped around the shoulders of the hanger and the waistcoat under the jacket. The cufflinks gleamed a metallic blue. However, Dice said, reaching across to the other length of the closet, I also found an old suit of mine you could wear instead. He lifted the hanger off the rung and held up a simple black suit. Your choice. Poison or Patton, whichever you prefer. Patton glanced back and forth between the suits. Dice was giving him a choice. He could present himself as Patton, the unfair target of a large bounty who just happened to be close friends with the critic. Or he could present himself as Poison Dart, finally announcing to the world that he's alive, and sending a silent message to everyone who wanted to go after him. I've killed dozens before you, and I could kill you too. Who do you want to be, darling? Dice said. I won't judge you no matter what you choose. But just know that I wouldn't be calling you Poison if I didn't believe Poison Dart was still in there somewhere. However, I've seen the way you are with Remy. I can't imagine Poison Dart caring for someone so much. Dice raised an eyebrow. It's your choice, hon. Patton scratched his shoulder through his shirt. He couldn't decide. Not now. Can I try them both? Dice gave him a sympathetic smile and handed both suits to Patton. You try them on. I need to go get changed. Dice brushed past him to leave the room. Patton took a deep breath. He hung up his own suit and looked over the old one that used to belong to Dice. He would try this one on first. He took off his t-shirt and started pulling on the suit. The shirt was a little small, since Dice was much shorter than Patton. The pants were a bit too short, and he couldn't quite button up the jacket without it feeling off. Patton looked in the mirror in the closet. He shifted, a little uncomfortable, and it was obvious just by looking at himself that this was not his own suit. He looked every bit like the nervous target of a bounty hunt, someone who had just been pulled out of their life to run from someone dangerous he wasn't prepared to face. He looked exactly like Patton Hart, or who he thought Patton Hart was supposed to be. He shot a glance at the other suit. He was tempted to just stick with this one, but he didn't want to make a decision before he tested all his options. He took off the suit and hung it back up. He stood in front of his own suit, the one he used to wear as Poison Dart when he went to public events. Dice had said his own suit was old, but Patton's hadn't been worn in 10 years. Still, he took the pieces off the hanger and put them on. The shirt was a little snug, but it fit better than Dice's. The waistcoat hugged his frame perfectly. The jacket always used to be a bit loose, but now it fit just right. The pants still fit too. The orange and blue belt was fitted with a gun holster, an ammunition pouch, and a knife sheath, all 3 of which were currently empty. The dress shoes were a little worn, but they were comfortable, easy to run in if he had to. He'd thought the suit would be worn from age, but judging by the tightly sewn seams, Dice had either kept it taken care of or had someone else fix it up a while ago. He looked in the mirror. Feeling the familiar fabric on his shoulders, he automatically straightened his back and wiped his face of any emotion that wasn't anger or annoyance. His shoulders relaxed, but the rest of him remained slightly tense, ready to fight anyone who came running at him. He wore the suit like a second skin. If he changed his hairstyle and covered the lower half of his face, he wouldn't be able to tell the difference between himself as he is now and who he was 10 years ago. Patton turned away from the mirror. The familiarity was both comforting and terrifying. He wanted something familiar, something to help him feel braver through all this, but he didn't want it to be this. He didn't want to be Poison Dart. That was why he left this business in the first place. Patton glanced back at the other suit, then at his reflection. He opened the closet door, just as Dice walked back into the room. Do you think it looks okay? He asked, a little hesitant. Dice gave Patton a once-over. It still fits, he said. He strode over to Patton, fixing his own suit and tie that he'd put on. He gave Patton a smile. Patton couldn't tell if it was sad or sympathetic or something else entirely. He fixed Patton's blue cufflinks, straightened the waistcoat, folded the blue and orange collar. Dice was a perfectionist when it came to clothing. He smoothed down the jacket, but his hands lingered over the blue and orange tie. You don't look entirely comfortable, darling, he said quietly. He lowered his sunglasses to give Patton a questioning look. You're still unsure. Patton hated to admit that Dice was right. He wanted to come out of the shadows, but his stomach tied itself into knots, and butterflies fluttered in his gut, and this suit was meant for Poison Dart, and Patton did not feel like Poison Dart. Not yet, anyway. Dice reached into his suit pocket. Here. This might help. Or make it worse. Who knows? He pulled a silver necklace out of his pocket. He walked behind Patton and latched it behind his neck. There. He smoothed out Patton's suit. Better? Patton looked down, and his breath caught in his throat. I thought I lost this, he muttered, running his thumb over the pendant. It was a silver heart-shaped locket, engraved with the initials PJ. You lost everything here, dear. It's no surprise. I've been waiting to give it back to you. Dice huffed. Well, it does clash horribly with the suit. But then again, the whole blue and orange color scheme is not working for me anyway. Hun, did you never think this through before you had everything done in these colors? Patton couldn't hold back a smile. I was 18. Give me a break. I thought it looked cool. Dice chuckled. Well, too late to rebrand, I suppose. He reached up and ran his fingers through Patton's hair. What do you want to do with this mess? I could always cut it. It's gotten long. Patton bit his lip. Well, his hair was a little annoying to manage. It couldn't hurt to chop some of it off. Just don't give me a mohawk or something, okay? Patton said. Don't worry, hon. I know you would not be able to pull off a mohawk, Dice said as he pulled Patton to the bathroom. Now, an undercut on the other hand. Dice sat Patton on the edge of the bathtub. Patton waited as Dice bustled around the bathroom, grabbing scissors and clippers and spray bottles. Turn around, darling. There's not a chair in here, so we have to make do. Patton turned so he was facing the wall. Dice combed through his curls, occasionally pausing to spray it with water. Patton took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. He was going out in public as Poison Dart for the first time in 10 years. He still didn't know if he was ready for that. The backlash, the fear, the anger he would face from everyone. He didn't trust himself to be able to handle that. His thoughts were interrupted by the buzzing of a hair clipper. He tensed as he felt Dice clip the hair at the nape of his neck. Don't move, Poison. You'll make me mess up, Dice said. Wouldn't want you going out there with a bald spot, would we? Patton stayed still as Dice clipped through the hair further up on Patton's head. After a few minutes of that loud buzzing in Patton's ears, Dice shut off the clipper and set it aside. He teased the curls on top of Patton's head with his fingers. He muttered under his breath and started combing it again. Patton heard the snipping of scissors right behind his head. You really did let this grow out of hand, darling, Dice mumbled. It's an absolute mess. I haven't had much time to get it cut, Patton said. Oh, hush. I know you have kids and all, but I'm sure you could have made time to get some of it chopped. After a few more minutes of snipping and trimming, Dice stepped back and swept the hair off Patton's clothes. Not my best work, but certainly not my worst. You look good, darling. Let me just... He combed Patton's hair back and hummed thoughtfully. No, hang on. He pushed Patton's hair forward, letting some of it fall in his eyes. Yeah, that's cuter. You used to keep your hair in an undercut like this, but you always combed it back. Why did you never keep it forward? Your curls look adorable. I wasn't trying to look adorable. I was trying to kill people, Patton said. Fair enough. Dice stepped back. I'll get someone to sweep up all this hair while we're out. Stand up, hon. Come look in the mirror. Patton turned around and stood. He stared into the mirror and inhaled sharply. He looked even more like his old self than he had before. With the suit and the hair, there was no doubt that everyone would recognize him as the old Poison Dart, even with his glasses. He didn't quite feel like Poison Dart, but he sure looked the part. Stoic, tense, maybe a little dangerous. And oddly enough, that made him feel a bit confident. No one would ever come after him again if he went out like this. You'll certainly make an impression, Dice said, walking up next to Patton. Are you ready, darling? Patton steeled his nerves. I think so. Dice took Patton's shoulders and turned him so they were face to face. Dice straightened Patton's collar again, tied the tie a little tighter, and brushed a stray piece of hair off the shoulder of the jacket. Dice's sunglasses were lowered a little, just enough for his bright blue eyes to peek out over the frames. His gaze flitted over Patton's face. You look hot, Dice said, hands still on the collar of Patton's suit. Sexy even, if I'm being honest. Patton blinked as he processed that. Dice, is there something you want to say? Dice smiled a little, but it wasn't his usual cocky smirk. It was softer, warmer than usual. There's nothing I can say, Dice said, his voice quiet. He stood on his tiptoes and gently pulled Patton down by his jacket. He planted a gentle kiss on Patton's cheek. Patton shivered as his breath fanned over Patton's skin. Dice pulled away. I'm glad we're friends, Patton, he said, and I'm content with just being that. Before Patton really had a chance to fully process what just happened, Dice let go of his jacket and walked back into the bedroom. Where did you leave your gun, baby? You should probably have it with you in case things go south. Patton walked over to the bag he'd set on the floor next to the bed. He flipped it open. He hesitated, still a little unsure about whether or not he wanted to go out there like this. But Dice had a point. Things could easily go bad. He grabbed the gun from the bag and tucked it into the empty holster at his belt. He slid the knife into the sheath on his right hip. He also tucked the spare ammunition into the pouch next to the gun. It couldn't hurt to be prepared. Dice walked up to Patton and linked their arms together. Now, let's go see my cousin. I'm sure he'll have a heart attack when he sees you in a suit. Dice nudged the door open and led Patton out into the hallway. Andy, hon, are you all finished getting ready? Dice called. Just about, Andy shouted from inside a room. Damn it, Princey, just let me tie this. I'm sorry, I've never worn a tie before, Price's voice said. How does it work? Andy, where's Remy? Dice asked. Getting ready in Thomas's room, Andy answered. The door swung open and she stepped out. She smoothed down the waistcoat over her dress shirt. A black brooch was pinned to her tie, and the heeled boots under her dress pants brought her height up taller than Dice. She looked Patton up and down. Nice hair, she commented. Price appeared in the doorway behind Andy, her cheeks as red as her hair, which had been pinned back from her face. She wore a sleeveless button-up shirt and a pencil skirt over a pair of tights. A golden necklace lay over her black tie. I don't usually go to important crime meetings, she said, fiddling with the necklace. Is there some sort of etiquette I have to follow? Andy looped her arm with Price's. You'll be fine, Princey. You just have to sit there and look pretty. Price's entire face turned red. She turned away from Andy and coughed into her fist in an attempt to hide her blush. A door near the end of the hallway opened. Thomas stepped out, frantically fixing his hair with his one good arm, the other one tucked in its sling. It's been ages since I've been to an important meeting. Do I look okay? You look gorgeous, darling, Dice said, looking over Thomas's dress shirt and pants. Your tie is a little crooked, though. Did Remy find the suit I left for him? Unfortunately, Remy grumbled as he stepped out of the room. God, I look like a... His voice trailed off when he looked at Patton. Patton tried to speak, but the breath had been snatched from his lungs. Remy wore one of Dice's old three-piece suits. It fit him perfectly, hugging every curve like it had been tailored specifically for him. He'd combed through his hair, but one stubborn lock of it still fell in his eyes. His heeled combat boots made him look just a bit taller. You look nice, Patton finally made himself say. Remy opened his mouth and closed it, like he didn't know what to say. He managed a strange squeaking noise. Come on, darlings, we should get going, Dice said. I'm sure Side Hill's biggest criminals are all dying to see us. He checked his watch. We'll be fashionably late, but I'm the host, so it's fine. Dice led Patton out of the hallway towards the elevator, finally tearing Patton's gaze away from Remy. What was it about suits that just made guys, specifically Remy, so much hotter? They paused in front of the elevator. Dice pressed the button. Patton's thoughts turned to the fact that he was about to go out there in front of people as Poison Dart. His stomach flipped with anxiety. You'll be all right, hon, Dice said quietly. I'll be with you the whole time. Patton nodded. The elevator doors opened. Dice and Patton stepped inside. Andy, Price, Thomas, and Remy followed. Remy still couldn't seem to take his eyes off Patton. Thomas winced every few seconds and gingerly touched the bandages around his arm. Andy and Price stood with their arms linked together, shooting an occasional glare at each other out of the corners of their eyes. Nervous butterflies fluttered in Patton's stomach as the elevator went down. There was no turning back now. As soon as those doors opened, everyone was going to know he was Poison Dart. Everyone was going to know he was still alive. "You'll be fine, hon," Dice whispered. "Don't worry about a thing." The elevator slowed to a stop. Patton wiped his face clean of emotion and watched the doors slide open. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the elevator. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series. If you like what you hear and you want to read more, you can find the link to the fic and the author in the description. If you want to check out other podfics I've done, you can click on the playlist linked on the screen. See you next time!